so glad that you're here today. Thanks for joining us, no matter where you're joining us from, whether you're in the room right here in Leander, you're at our Liberty Hill campus, you're watching from your bedroom, you're watching from the couch or out on your back patio. We don't really care where you're joining us from. You've turned your house into a campus. You've joined us at a campus. We are so glad that you would join us. Let me just ask you that there's a QR code that's coming up on the screen with me right now. If you happen to be online, would you just grab your phone, and it's pretty easy to do. You just grab your phone, turn on your camera, and scan your screen. For those of you in the rooms, you have a QR code in front of you to do the same thing, and that's a connection card. And if you're our first-time guest with us, no matter where you're joining us from, we're really glad that you're here. Thanks so much, and excited to be able to connect with you. If this is your place and you join us every week, then that's how we connect, and we'd love to be able to pray for you about whatever's going on. We'd love to be able to connect with you and you to let us know what's going on with you, and that's our way to do that. That's our connection card from that QR code, and so we're really glad that you're here. And then we want you to know that as we go through the service today, if you want to talk to somebody, there is a number. If you're online, it's coming up on screen right now. If you're here in one of our campuses, it's 512-259-8872, and you can literally text or call someone and talk to them today. We would love to be able to talk to you about what it is you're dealing with and pray for you over what's going on in your life. And as we begin today, we just want to acknowledge that our world is hurting today, and we're going to address it today. There is something we can do. There is something we can engage in, and the comeback from this is going to be so incredibly important. And so today, I want you to know that we love you no matter where you are and whatever's gone on with you, and we're so glad that you're a part of today. It's going to be a pretty moving day, so buckle up and get ready, because it's going to be one of those Rock Point kinds of days. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in a minute. Come on, let's stand together and sing.
Is there anybody sunshine been turned to rain? Is there anybody's blue sky been turned to gray? Is there anybody's good time turned out with pain? Is there anybody's happiness been turned out sad? And I know I can trust in the things that I see, yeah. All I know is at work, he's working on me, yeah. So let it rain, let it pour. Lord, I need you more and more. Let it rain, rain down on me. Every day, whatever you want, not my will but yours, Lord. Let it rain, rain down on me. Is there anybody's mountain too tall to climb? Is there anybody's faith in like a running trail? Let me tell you, he's able, done it for me, yeah. He can take your mountain and throw it into the sea. So let it rain, let it pour. Lord, I need you more and more. Let it rain, rain down on together, strangers, neighbor, our blood is one. Children of generation, of every nation, his kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where help comes from. Oh, 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 oh. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. Yeah, don't let your heart be troubled. Say it. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 oh. Sweet white or ye heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all ye heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Let's sing that again. Swing wide, all ye heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Sing his name, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. I don't know about you, but I hate when I go to church or a concert and they sing a new song I don't know. And I know whether you're watching online or you're in this room right now, you're feeling that feeling. But hopefully, now that we're at the end of the song, you've kind of caught on to it. So this is my favorite part of the song. Let's sing this together. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high. Don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high. Don't fear no evil. Sing it again. Oh, don't let your heart be troubled. Oh, hold your head up high. Don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. His kingdom come. Well, hey, if you're at home or you're in the room, you can have a seat. We wanted to take just a quick second to pause in the middle of our service, in the middle of singing and all the awesome stuff that's coming. You know, prayer is not the only thing we do, it's the first thing we do. And so I wanted to invite us as a church, watching all around our cities in Liberty Hill and Leander and Lago and all the different places. And through this quarantine, we've had people watching from other states. It's been the coolest thing ever. But I wanted to give us a second to all pray the same thing. How powerful would that be this morning for us to be praying the same thing? There's this thing that we do called guided prayer, and that may sound weird or extra spiritual. It's not. All it is that we're praying the same thing at the same time. So this morning, I want to invite you just to close your eyes wherever you're at. If you've got kids around and you can't do that, I totally understand. But let's just take a moment just to breathe, right? Just to clear our head of distractions or the things that may be going around in our head or our hearts this morning. So wherever you're at, just close your eyes. The first thing we're going to pray together this morning, all together at the same time, is that God would break my heart. Jesus was always with the lonely, the outcast, the oppressed, the judged, the looked over. If you wanted to know where Jesus is or where he was, look for those people. As a matter of fact, you used to be one of those people, or you might be even today. Your life was off track. You were lost, and he found you. He didn't come with judgment. He didn't come with a heavy hand. He came like a father who loves his kids. And so this morning, we're going to pray that God would break our hearts, because nothing will change in our world. Nothing will change in your world, in your heart, unless God breaks it. And I want to challenge those who are fighting that prayer this morning to pray it even more. What breaks God's heart? What makes him angry? What makes him filled with sorrow? So this morning, I just want to give you just 20 seconds to pray that simple prayer. God, break my heart. Let's do that together. The next thing I want to lead us to pray together all over our city this morning is, God, what would you have me do? I've got a lot of opinions about what you should do with your life. But God, what do you want me to do with my life? How do you want me to respond? What do you want me to say? Where do you want me to go? Who do you want me to talk to? What do you want me to fight for? So I'm going to give you just a few seconds just to pray humbly. God, would you show me, what do you want me to do this morning? And the last thing we're going to pray together this morning is for unity. You know, Jesus, when he was on the cross and dying for your sin and my sin, with his arms stretched wide and nails in his hands and his feet and a crown of thorns on his head, he prayed a prayer. What do you think Jesus would have prayed in that moment? Well, what he prayed is that we would be one. That those of us who choose to follow Jesus would unite around him and what he cares about. It is a powerful prayer for all of us, whether you're watching through this screen right now or you're in this room, to pray that our church would be more unified than we've ever been. There are some people that need Jesus' love, and they need a church like Rock Point to find it. So this morning, I want to give us just a few seconds all over to pray the same prayer together, that we would be one. Let's pray that together for unity in our church. God, I thank you that you hear our prayers, that we're not just praying to the sky, that there is a Father in heaven who has all power, who has every capability to change a heart, to change a life, to turn someone around, to give us the answers we're looking for in our life, and to bring us closer together in unity. Thank you for everybody that just participated in that prayer. I pray that you would make those things come true in our lives, that you'd break our hearts, you would give us the answers of what we're supposed to do in our own hearts, our own families, our own lives. But God, also that you would bring us closer together than we've ever been as a church. God, you said that the world will know that we're following you by how we love one another. So challenge us with that today. We pray all this in your name, amen. Hey, I want to invite you to stand again and sing with us. We're going to sing this song called You Keep Hope Alive that we've been singing lately. And this song was actually written by the worship pastor of the church that Jessica and I went to in Tennessee. And it was a response to the mass shooting that happened in Charleston a few years ago. So this song just has a special meaning, I think, even for the time that we're in today. But this song's called You Keep Hope Alive. May be darkest, your light is greater. You light our way, God, you light our way. Evil is rising, you're rising higher, with power to save, with power to save. Hope alive, you keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word never fails. You keep hope alive, because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Death had a stronghold, but your life was stronger. Rose from the grave, rose up from the dead. Rising higher, with power to save, with power to save. Oh, say, oh, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word never fails. You keep hope alive, because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. There's hope in the morning, hope in the evening, hope because you're living, hope because you're breathing. There's hope in the breaking, hope in the sorrow, hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. There's hope in the morning, there's hope in the evening, there's hope because you're living, there's hope because you're breathing, there's hope in the breaking, there's hope, hey, in the sorrow, there's hope for this moment, my hope for tomorrow. You keep hope alive from the beginning to end. Your word never fails. You keep hope alive because you are alive. Oh, Jesus, you are alive. Hey, thank you guys so much for singing with us this morning. You can kick back, relax, and watch this video. Hey, it's the Rock Point staff here, and we just want to let you know we're so thankful for you. We love getting to serve you and be a part of this church family together.
For the next couple of minutes, we're going to give you the lowdown on Summer 2020 at Rock Point. So buckle up and get ready for a summer full of fun and surprises.
This summer, we are focused on 3 specific missions as a church. Number 1 is
Be a neighbor.
we're putting out a challenge to get to know the people on your street. How much we need you.
So this week's focus is to enjoy your summer with the Kona Ice Truck on Wednesday, and also to serve a hero by giving a thank you card while you're picking up free snow.
Well, there you have it. That's our summer mission. Be a neighbor, enjoy your summer, and serve the hero. Those tan-ons may fade, but the mission will last forever.
So as we say every week, we're using family, our church, and our community.
Clap. Hey, it's the Rock Point staff here, and we're so thankful to be a part of this church family with you. We love getting to serve you. I said that wrong. We are all the least of these, just people in need of all kinds of grace. And on the outside we dress well, our stains of guilt have more to tell. God be with the drunk, God be with the outcast, God be with the sinners and the thief. Change our rowdy ways, every careless mistake. Oh God, please show us mercy. We are all the least of these, just people in need, all kinds of grace. On the outside we dress well, our stains are guilt have more to tell. We tend to think we're better when we're standing next to a broken man who's seen his better day. My politician heart always saying it's your fault. Yeah, tell the truth, boy, you'll find your way. We are all the least of these, just people in need, all kinds of great. On the outside we dress well, our stains of guilt have more to tell. We are all the least of these, just people in need of all kinds of grace. On the outside we dress well, our stains of guilt have more to tell. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. All right, now let's play. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Come on, Sister John. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short. Take care of each other, lift up your brother, and we have all fallen short.
Well, I am so glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us today. We're just thrilled to have you with us. And so the question we've been asking in this series is, who are we going to be when this is all over? What is this going to do to us? What is it that we put into it? And what are we going to be when this is all over? And are there some things that we've learned that will forever change us and who we are as we've gone through this COVID season? And then in the past couple of weeks as our culture has erupted over racial conflict. And so here's what I've been thinking. And I just believe that this is true again about both cases. And it's this, that the comeback is perhaps more important than the conflict itself. Like who we are when we come out of this, who we are when we emerge from this is more important than the conflict itself. Who are we going to be after this? How is this going to change us? One of the things that I've loved seeing through this whole COVID season is how people have just cared for one another. I mean, it's like that whole human spirit thing that just kind of has risen up. It's kind of like that thing we see when national and natural disasters happen and the world runs to a place to help. And there's just something amazing that rises out of all the brokenness and all of the ashes that comes alive in those moments. And if you've never experienced that, it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen about human beings. It's wonderful. But for those of us who call ourselves Jesus followers, this is not just a human spirit thing for us. Yes, we should do those things, but as a Jesus follower, it's more than that. And you and I, as Jesus followers, have got to understand that Jesus followers are called to care. Not just in the midst of tragedy, not just in the midst of unrest. We are called to care all the time. We're called to that as we follow Jesus. We are called to reflect the compassion and the care of God, not just in tragedy, not just in racial conflict and unrest, but always. And so let me just give you the message right up front today, in case you got to leave or in case you got to turn me off or I upset you or whatever. At least you will get the message. Let me just give it to you right up front, and I hope you'll type this into your phone. I hope you'll write this down, and here it is. That to say that you care and to not act is to not care at all. Listen to that again. If you say that you care and you don't act, you don't really care. We are Jesus followers, and we are called to be full of compassion. To say that we care and not to act is to not care at all, because caring is not just a feeling, it's an action. In fact, I would say that true compassion demands action. Do you know there's this word in the New Testament? And it's a Greek word, and it's translated for us into English. Our English word for this Greek word is the word compassion. Now, I didn't even put it on the screen because this is such a long Greek word. It's taking me years to learn how to say it, and I still don't do it justice. And so I didn't even put it on the screen because that's not what's most important, is how long the word is. What's most important is what that word means. And this word, this long Greek word that's translated into our English Bible as compassion, means this. It means to have your bowels yearn. It means to ache so much on the inside that you are moved to action. It's translated as compassion, but it is so much more than just compassion. It is this inward aching for someone who is in need that moves us and drives us and compels us and shakes us into action. In fact, let me give you a couple of examples of this where we see Jesus exhibiting this type of deep compassion. It's so interesting because every time we saw Jesus feeling compassion, his feeling of compassion immediately was followed by an act of goodness. One of those is from Matthew chapter 14, verse 14, and take a look. Jesus saw a large crowd, and he had compassion on them. He felt for them. He hurt for them. Why? Because of what was going on, and what did he do? And he healed their sick. He acted, he felt, and he acted. Another one's found in Matthew 20, where Jesus saw some blind guys, and it says Jesus had compassion on them. And what did he do? He touched their eyes and he healed them. Another one's found in Mark chapter 6. Jesus saw a large crowd. It said he had compassion on them because they were wandering around in their lives like sheep without a shepherd. And so what did he do? He began teaching them a different way. He felt so deeply that he acted. See, to say that we care but not to act is really not to care at all. And let me just say it this way for us, as bold as I know how, that the closer you get to Jesus, the more you'll care for the things that he cares for. But let me tell you the other side of that as well. The further you drift away from Jesus, the less you're going to care about what really matters to him. And so today, I want us to look at a very well-known story, but I want to tell you, this was on the books for us for well over a month for us to talk about this today. And what we're going to talk about is what is the most racially charged story in all of Scripture. Let me set it up. There was this guy who was an expert of the law in the first century, and he was debating with Jesus by saying, "What do I need to do for my soul to be saved?" And Jesus said, "Well, why don't you tell me? What does the law say?" And the guy says, "Well, the law says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul and your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said, "You're exactly right. Why don't you just go do that?" And the guy said, "Okay, I'll do that, but before I do, I've got to ask you a question. I got to know something first. If I'm supposed to love my neighbor, I need to know which neighbor you're talking about. I mean, are you talking about my next door neighbor? Or are you talking about that guy right over there that I kind of don't know, but I see him in town? Are you talking about my neighbor who's in my online class? Are you talking about the person that lives in the apartment above me? Are you talking about the person I see at my first century Starbucks when I go buy my $12 latte? Is that the person you're talking about? I mean, come on, Jesus, who are you talking about?" And here's what the guy said from Luke chapter 10, verse 12. He says this. He wanted to justify himself, and so he asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor? Who is this that you're talking about? Who is it that I have to care for?" And so Jesus said, "Well, let me just tell you a little story." And so in reply to this guy's question, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho." Now, if you know a little bit about that, you'll know it was an incredibly dangerous road. This guy was driving down the wrong road, probably. He was in a very dangerous area, but he had some place to go, and for some reason, he went down there, and he knew if he took that road, it was a potential for robbers to jump out and beat the fire out of you. And so this guy's just in a very dangerous area, and look what happened. Some guys jump out, and look what happened. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat the life out of him almost, and went away, leaving him half dead. They just beat him until he was bleeding and almost unconscious, taking everything that he had. This dude is in bad, bad shape. And so here comes the good news, right? We've got two religious guys coming along the same road. Great news, but maybe not. Take a look at verse 31. It says this, a priest, or let me just interject, a pastor, we could say, happened to be going down the same road. I don't know why, but he's going down the same road. And when he saw the man, he looked ahead and saw the man. He moved to the other side of the road and just kept driving. Now go ahead and put yourself in the priest's shoes for a minute. I think that's fair. There's a couple of things going on here. Chances are he might have had a long week at the temple. If you're a pastor, you know that can happen. Maybe he's dealing with some problems at home because he's been at the temple too long this week. And maybe you've felt that in your own job. Maybe he's thinking to himself, look, this could just be a trap. These guys might be coming at me, and I might go over there, and there may be 4 guys out there, and I don't see them, and this is a total trap, and when I go over there, they're going to jump on me, and then I'm going to be the guy. This guy might just be faking it, and I don't have time for that. I don't want to get involved in that. Maybe this guy was a criminal and had been released, and the people who beat him up was the family of the people he caused the crime against, and so they came and got him, and maybe he actually deserved it. Maybe he just got what he had coming. Maybe he had some bad debts. Maybe they found him and he just deserved what he got. And so you can kind of understand perhaps the conversation that was going on in this guy's head, much like you and I do. The conversation goes on, and he gets to the other side of the road and just talks himself out of stopping to help the poor guy. Look at verse 32. A Levite, another religious person, when he came to the place and saw him, he saw what was happening. And what did he do? Got on the other side of the road and passed on the other side. Now let me just say this, and I hope this rattles you to your core. And it's this. You will always have an excuse to justify not getting involved with someone's pain. You will always find an excuse. When you see someone in need, when you see an injustice, just get ready for that conversation to go off in your head because you're always going to have an excuse. It's like, you know what, I'm running late. I don't know them. I mean, you read about these things. These things get screwy all the time. I've got my own issues to deal with. I don't want to get involved. I mean, this could be a long, drawn-out thing. I could help them now, and then they might just be super needy and like clamp onto me and want me to just do all this stuff. I don't have time for that kind of relationship in my life. And you're always going to have a reason to justify not getting involved when someone needs help. And the conversation in your head just keeps playing. But the reality is, to say that we care and not to act is not to care at all. And as Jesus followers, we are called to take care of each other. So the first thought I want to give you is this. Some thoughts about compassion, and 3 of them specifically in this story. The first one is this: is compassion will interrupt your schedule. This type of compassion is going to mess up your schedule. You don't just wake up one day and say, you know, I got a little extra time. I haven't really been I don't got a lot to do today, so I think I'll just go out and find me somebody to help. Generally, what's going to happen is God is going to interrupt your schedule with something you don't have planned that might be uncomfortable, and perhaps God had it planned for you that day. So that's exactly kind of how the story goes, because take a look in verse 33 what happened. But a Samaritan, that's important, as he traveled, came to where the man was. And just like the other 2, looked down the road and saw him. And he took, look at the word, pity on him. Do you know what that word pity actually is? It is the identical Greek word as compassion. He had that same deep compassion on this guy. He felt it. And here's where this story fits today. This dude was all beat up. And he was a Jew. And the guy who came along was a Samaritan. You go, well, what's the problem with that? There was an enormous racial division between Jews and Samaritans. There was a normal injustice going on between Jews and Samaritans because Samaritans were half Jew and half Gentile, and a Jew would walk around a city to avoid a Samaritan. It was a hate fest that had been going on for 700 years at this point. And the Samaritan guy, who would have been hated by the Jewish guy, did one simple act. And what did he do? Instead of seeing the guy and walking on the other side of the road, he walked across the street to the guy. He saw another human being. And even though he was different and from a different race, he took care of that man who was in need. In his most famous speech, I believe, Dr. Martin Luther King said this, that the first question that the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? The Good Samaritan reversed the question and said, if I do not stop and help this man, what will happen to him? And listen to me closely. That is the heart of the gospel. It is loving God with everything you are and loving others for who they are. Why do we still have racism that exists today? I think there's really 3 reasons that have been woven into the fabric of our society now. I think one of those is maybe because someone has been a victim of hatred. Maybe someone mistreated you or mistreated someone that you love, and so we feel like we can't trust them, and so I don't like them, and they don't like us. I think another reason that racism exists today is because it is taught. Like our family doesn't hang out with those people. They don't hang out with us. We don't trust them. They don't trust us. They're all like that. And that kind of thing is taught and handed down from generation to generation. And then I think a third part of this is just simple ignorance. It is a lack of perspective. It is a lack of exposure and a lack of honest conversation with people whose skin is different than yours. And when you get those three things built into the fabric of a society and built into the system of a society, there will continue to be racism. So let me just tell you, I want to be on God's side of this. I believe to God that Black lives matter. And anybody with any brain activity knows that all lives matter, but right now we have a part of our community that is frustrated and hurting. And so as a Jesus follower, let me tell you, I'm just going to agree, Black lives matter. Of course they matter. And if you're like, yeah, Black lives matter, but then you're the kind of person who would have interrupted Jesus in his most important sermon on the Mount when he said, blessed are the poor. And you would have said, oh, Jesus, you mean blessed are all people. Why can't we speak about this issue and why can't we speak about another issue? Why do we got to merge all of that together? Of course, all lives matter. That's why we're saying Black lives matter, is because all lives matter. Come on. If we're going to say liberty and justice for all, then let's walk that out in every area. But no matter how we got here, look, as Jesus followers, here's what we got to know, that racism is not a skin color issue. Racism is a sin issue. It's a sin issue. Racism is wrong in every form. Mistreating or harming anyone because of race is a sin in the eyes of God, and it should be a sin in your eyes too. And yet, here we have someone from a completely different race who stops for someone who would be considered the enemy and feels for him because he's another human being. He stops and he has compassion. Look at verse 34. I love this. Verse 34 just says, he went to him. He went to him. He went to the man who was in need. God help us to go to the people who are in need. God help us to walk across the street and start hard conversations and admit where we're wrong and choose to love people that are different than us and open our arms and break the chains of racism in our country. This is the generation to do it. I sat this past week with a lot of people, but two guys in particular I sat across the table from, and we had this conversation. What's it going to look like for our kids to be able to sit around this table at our age and not have to have this conversation? I want you to see the anti-racist move of this guy in the first century. Look at this. He went to him and he bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Where do you think he got those? They were his. Then he put the man on his donkey and took him to an inn and took care of him. Compassion's going to interrupt your schedule. This isn't easy, but if you'll be sensitive to the whispers of God inside of you, he will interrupt you and give you compassion to just take care of someone who's in need. Compassion's going to interrupt your schedule, but that's not all. Compassion also not only interrupts, but it also costs. Compassion's going to cost you something. It costs us something when we take care of one another. Sometimes we just have to give sacrificially. Sometimes we got to get out of ourselves. In fact, here's the story. Look at verse 35. The next day, you know what that means when it says the next day? That means this Samaritan guy spent the night at the inn with the Jewish guy. This is the next day. He took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper and said, look after him, he said, and when I return, I'll reimburse you for the extra expense you may have. Do you know how much that was to him in that time? That was 2 days' wages for him. He didn't just hand the guy off and said, I did my part, tag, you're it. He stayed with it, and he made the sacrifice to actually help. When you care for others, it's just going to cost you something. Here's the third thing I want you to know about compassion, and this is the beautiful part of this, is compassion changes lives. Compassion will change lives. Look at Jesus. Follow his trail and watch as he was interrupted time after time. Watch as he spends time with those people that were different than him, people that were so dirty in that society to everyone else and no one else would have anything to do with. And watch as he cares for others that others didn't care for. And watch as he had time for little children, and watch his compassion for widows, and watch his compassion for prostitutes and tax collectors, and watch his compassion for people who were in need, and watch his compassion who were people who felt left out. And he felt it so deeply that he was compelled to act, and yet so many of us drive on by. We change the channel. We don't have the hard to get started conversation. We don't risk knocking on the door. We make a nice little Facebook post and feel as though we have cared. We say we care, but to say we care and not act is to not care at all. Compassion changes life. But guess what? Not just lives of other people. Compassion will change your life. And every time you drive by, not only do you miss an opportunity to impact the life of someone else, but you miss the opportunity for God to change and impact you. We are called to care. What kind of church are we actually going to be when we come through all of this? And I'm just going to tell you right now, if this is your place, and you choose for this to be your place, if you're going to represent Jesus through this church, we are going to be people who care. People may say, well, I don't believe everything like you believe. I don't agree with what you agree with, but oh my gosh, do you guys care? You guys don't always say it right. You guys don't always get it right. You guys may miss the mark once in a while, but holy smokes, does this church care? And why would they ever say that? Because we cared enough to act and get involved. May God have mercy on us for walking to the other side of the street, for crossing on the other side, for mistreating anyone because of the color of their skin, for letting that conversation start in my mind that says, don't stop, don't get involved. That's not your responsibility. Tell yourself, shut up, Shane. Walk across the street. Just shut it down, Shane. Start the conversation. Just be quiet inside your head, Shane. That's not going to get you anywhere. Make a difference and care. Because to say that we care, but not to act, is not to care at all. And so I challenge you today to look inside your heart and ask yourself the question, who am I going to be when this is all over? Because how you come out of this is who you're going to be. And so I challenge us as a church. I told you for a couple weeks now, one of the things we're going to be focusing on this summer is be a neighbor. In fact, what I want to do is I want to bring a number up on the screen right now. And if you want to take some steps on being a neighbor this summer, you go, I don't know what to do. Well, it may be about this whole deal with race. It may be this whole deal with COVID. It may be this whole deal in your neighborhood. But if you want to learn about what do I do, then what I want you to do is right now, I want you just to text the word neighbor and tell us, hey, I'd like some information on what to do. And we're going to send you something about how to connect with your neighbor. You need to have a conversation. Your neighbor needs to know you exist. And I'm not talking about waving when you mow the lawn. I'm talking about they need to know how to get a hold of you if your house is on fire. They need to know how to talk to you if something goes wrong. Those people in your neighborhood are the people God has placed in your path to do something about. So be a neighbor. Open the door of conversation about topics that we've talked about today and topics in your neighborhood, and learn how to engage this summer and be a neighbor. And some of you go hey, I'm already a good neighbor. Good for you. I don't know about you, but I probably have some places I could learn. And together this summer, we're gonna work on being a neighbor. And so I want you, if you want some help with that, we will begin to text you some ideas on what that means. All you gotta do is text 512-710-2323 and the word neighbor to it. And we're gonna get busy working on this together. And you may have to have an awkward conversation. And you might have to give out your phone number to that guy in the neighborhood. But let me tell you, compassion changes lives. And it might just change yours. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for what you've done in us and through us. And God, I pray that you would help us today as we lean into who you are and what you have for us and what we need to do. God, help us not to write it off. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Watch this quick video.
Hey friends, I wanted to take a quick second to share with you part of my story and to challenge you to take a specific step today. Hey, as many of you know, my family and I recently moved back to Texas from Tennessee to rejoin our Rock Point family. And most of that story, you'll have to read one day in the book that I'm gonna write. But to make a long story short, most of the days in Tennessee were spent feeling lonely and wishing we had friends, wishing we could find a friend to call up to go to dinner with or to meet at the lake. But as we begin to think about moving back to Texas, we begin to pray that God would help us to find our people again. Well, a few months ago, we joined one of our Rock Point small groups. And the truth is, I didn't know how lonely I was until I found that group. And now it's one of the best parts of my life. Throughout this quarantine, we've met over Zoom virtually, and we've also met spaced out in our Liberty Hill Rock Point campus parking lot just to have some human interaction. Now, I share part of my story with you to encourage you and to tell you that you don't have to live life alone. And before you say it, I know finding a group is hard and difficult. You work weird hours, your schedule's filling back up, you tried it and it didn't work before. Friendship is not an instant thing, but from a guy who desperately needed it, let me tell you, it's worth it. It's worth all the awkwardness of putting yourself out there again. Have you found your people? Do you feel disconnected from the church lately? Do you have someone that's praying for you right now, or someone that could show up when it hits the fan in your life? Summer is the easiest time to join a group. Over the summer, we're shifting our focus as a group to fun and just being together. And we've got virtual groups where you can meet over Zoom or FaceTime or other technology out there. And we've got in-person groups where it's just about being together and having fun. Now, Adam, how can I find a group? That's a great question. Today on your connection card, you can write in the comments, join a group. And we'll connect you with someone this week, ASAP. But if you're a do-it-yourself kind of person, you can log on to the church website or through your Rock Point app, and you can look at all the available groups that are there for you. So friends, whether it's virtual or in person, I just want to encourage you, don't live life alone. Let's be together this summer.
Rock Point, you know that this is one of my favorite times of the service, is after the service when we get to go and we get to hang out in the lobby, and especially after a message like today, I just love to hear what people are feeling and what they thought about the service, and it's just one of those ways that we can just take it just one step further. And so today I have Pastor Shane, who just spoke, and we have John Evans, who is our family pastor at Rock Point. And we're just going to dive in and just ask a couple of questions, maybe just to hear a little bit more about it. Okay, guys, right now, this is just such an interesting time in our world. We've had more go on in 2020. I mean, you've seen all the memes with, how 2020 has been horrible. And I just think, gosh, we need compassion more than ever. And so I really appreciated that you brought that up today. And I'm going to have a moment of honesty, is that sometimes even for me, having compassion is hard, because of just things that happen in life. Our hearts they get a little bit hardened, And so I can imagine if I feel like that, there's probably other people that feel like that. And so what do you think that we can do if we feel like that to help ignite some compassion in us?
You
Wow.
going to me? You
You're
going to me?
first,
Okay.
yes.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think what I just talked about is it's so easy to talk yourself out of this. So I'm going to go back to something we taught our church several years ago.
Perfect.
And it's what we called the 10-second rule, right? Because here's what I know about me is that if I have this thought of what I should do and I don't do it in about 10 seconds, I'm probably not going to do it, right? I'm going to make an assessment and I'm going to do exactly what those other religious people did, and I'm going to move to the other
Yeah.
side of the road because it's an inconvenience to do that.
Right.
What I love is that I had the thought I should do it. I mean, so let's give
Right.
some credit,
Yes.
right? Let's give
Yes.
some credit
Focus
to
on
that.
the thoughts we do have.
That's a good thing. The problem is knowing is not enough.
Right.
The thought is not enough.
Yeah.
Saying I care is not enough.
Right.
If I don't do that, and whatever your amount of seconds is for me, I move on pretty quick, right? I
Right.
mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys.
Yeah.
I move on pretty quick. So for me, mine's about 10 seconds, and I gotta do something about that now.
now.
And if
That's-
I don't. So I
that's
think that's a
good.
huge piece.
That's good. And John, as our family pastor, can you kind of talk a little bit about how we can help develop that compassion in our kids and kind of recognize maybe that feeling that Shane's talking about and how we can help them take their next step?
Yeah, so you started off by talking about how so much has changed
Yeah.
and this year being such a struggle. One of the things for me that's been a unique opportunity, I have 4 children, and so this time has given me a lot of opportunity to have time with my kids and to focus on things that maybe I had been too busy to focus on or had so much going on in their schedules. It's slowed things down enough where I can act on compassion just in my family.
Yeah.
And so that's been a big thing for us and for my wife and I. And it's a reminder, like, a greatest goal for me as a dad is to help teach my own kids God's love. I mean, God's love took action. He gave his son.
Right.
And so that's an action. And for my kids to begin to understand those things, which a big part of that responsibility falls on my shoulders as a parent,
Right.
to help teach my kids that. So then they can begin to receive that, and then they can live out the golden rule. I mean, that's a big thing. When,
Right.
as a kid, I learned in children's church, and my grandpa would say a prayer before every meal, and he would finish it with, "And help us be ever mindful of the needs of others." And so for us, that's one of the biggest challenges and biggest goals as a dad is to help my kids see the needs around them and to take action towards
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I have to take action towards my kids
Right.
to show them
Right.
and model them that, because then Jesus did that. He modeled that for us.
Because love is action. Okay, so you brought this up. Speaking of being parents, we're all parents up here. And guys, whether we like it or not, our kids don't always act compassionate. And that sometimes our kids are on the other end of somebody that lacks compassion. Let's talk about how we can help our kids when they're hurt by other people.
Yeah, so I can really relate to this. So I have my oldest son, and if you know him, he's just like this big giant of a man. He's 6'8", and I don't know why. But
And he's been tall.
like from the
Forever.
get-go, we didn't
Yeah.
even know he was tall until we put him in T-ball at like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And he went out on the field and like he was a head taller, and I'm like, did we get him in the wrong grade?
Yeah.
Like we didn't even realize how big he was, right? And so because of that, you would think everybody would be afraid of that with him being so big, but as he got into later elementary and middle school, it was like, can you take out the big guy?
Right.
And so, man, we worked through a lot of this stuff of like, this is how you handle this, this is who you talk to, this is what you say, do this, do that. And, honestly, I had teachers so upset at me over this, but the day came when I finally told them, okay, look, if you come home today and you've allowed that to happen to you again after nobody doing anything and you don't do something about it, you're going to have to deal with me.
Yeah.
And I called him to action.
Yeah.
And his mom was upset at me and his teachers were upset at me, but he needed to know I got to stand up for this.
Right.
And you know what's crazy? It took one time.
Yeah.
Because, now I don't even want Jace coming after me now,
Yes, yes.
but if you're a middle school kid
Yes.
and you got this beast of a man standing over you because he just
Yes.
put you on the ground,
Yes.
okay, I maybe have got
Yes.
it. So, I think there's just, to be on the other side of that compassion is a big, big deal about like, what is that, you know? And to feel like that you've had an injustice done to your kid.
Right.
And look, I don't understand the race injustice in my family. Like,
Right.
I can't even compare the two because I
Right.
can't speak to that, right? But all I can tell you is as our family, that's something that we've experienced that we had to work through, and it's not the same.
Right.
That's not built into our system.
Right, right.
But I had to work my kid through that to let him know that sometimes it's okay to go ahead and stand
Right.
up for something you really
Right.
believe.
So one thing I heard you say is it wasn't a one-time conversation. Like you worked through it
I
multiple
talked to
times on different
administrators,
levels.
teachers.
And,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
and I
I mean-
imagine you and Jace didn't have one conversation, you know?
Nope, we didn't, and that's not the only time that's happened in our family.
Yeah.
You know, both of my boys have had to
Yeah.
have had to do that. You know,
Yeah.
maybe that's because I'm a fighter. I don't
Right.
know, but I just want them to know.
Right.
You know, look, you come to a point where you've got to say something.
Yeah.
And you know,
Let's
I mean,
take
as,
action.
as far as what we're talking about today, as far as this racing, I mean, that's just where we are. It's
Right.
like, look,
It's
look,
time.
it's just time to take action.
Right.
I get it, and that's just a big
Yeah.
thing. It's where we are.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, we're going to wrap up our time here, but I have one more question for both of you. So at the end, you really talked about being a neighbor and how right now I believe more than ever we need to get to know the people in our neighborhoods, and we need to and just be a good neighbor. So you shared a little bit about like you mentioned it's important to let them know who you are. So can you tell a little bit about maybe like a personal time or like why are you so passionate about our people like really getting to know their neighbors? And John, I'm going to ask you too about your neighbors.
Yeah.
So, why don't you go
All right,
first?
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for us, we live right across the street from a cul-de-sac, and so I get to be the all-time QB every day when I get home from work. We build little ramps out there, and it's just really cool because kids all over the neighborhood, they just show up. There's always somebody. We want to be the house where the friends are knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we get to like make cookies and make snacks. And when we begin to build relationships through our kids with the neighborhood kids, then we get to see their parents. And then, you know, you earn parents' love and trust when you treat their kids well. And then there's a real opportunity to connect with those parents and build relationships, but also see those needs as a neighbor to take action and to help serve your neighbors or just build those relationships.
That's good.
I wish my answer was as great as yours. You know, for me, it was an instance that happened to us. I had some friends coming over one night, and our friends walked up to our front door and it was like banging on our door. We opened the door, and they were like, "Hey, there's a fire in a house two doors down." I'm like, "What?" You know? So I run outside and we look, and sure enough, the house 2 doors down is on fire. So I go running down there, and I'm banging on the door, and nobody's coming, and I'm banging harder, and nobody's coming. And so I'm looking in windows, everything, and finally the door swings open. There's a lady in a bathrobe and a towel over her head, and she is mad.
Well, I bet.
She is so mad because she had just gotten out of the shower. She's trying to rest, and she's pregnant, and I have made her get up and come to the door. She was inside, had no idea her house was on fire. And I'm like, you know, it's such an important thing to be able to go, you never know what the problem is 2 doors down.
Yes.
You never know when you might need to reach out, or the truth is they may need to reach
Yes.
out to you.
Yes.
And how can I have compassion and truly act and care if I have no contact
Right.
or no contact information? It'd be
Right.
like people at Rock Point. If you wouldn't give us any contact information, it'd be really hard for us to minister to you.
Right.
That's all there is to
Right.
it. And so it's just so important to take a little step. People say all the time, well, what can I do? Start there.
Right.
Start there.
Right.
That's what we want to help
Yes.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our time is up today. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're joining us online, I want to encourage you to stick around for just a few more seconds. We have a video for you to watch. Watch this.
Hey, wait, hold on. Don't go anywhere. Parents, we have everything you need to make church happen with your kids right now. Head to our website and click the Watch tab. There you will find videos for kids ages 0 to 5th grade. So fill up your copy and get the kids, and watch right from your TV, computer, tablet, or phone. We'll see you over there.